unpack this now with James Dorsey. He's an honorary fellow at Singapore's Middle East Institute. Thank you for being with us on the program today. Now, Myanmar obviously has been a topic of discussion for ASEAN leaders for some time now, but they seem to be at a standstill when it comes to finding solutions for restoring democratic rule in the country.
Well, I think that ASEAN is at a standstill on a number of issues, and it's creating something of an identity crisis, if you wish, or in any case, a soul-searching in terms of the relevancy of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. You have Myanmar, where the ASEAN countries have a 5-point plan to try and resolve the problem. The Myanmar authorities have not cooperated on that. You have differences within the various ASEAN countries in terms of how to approach Myanmar. It's just a few months ago that Thailand went out on its own, invited the Myanmar foreign minister for peace talks in Thailand, and none of the ASEAN members were willing to show up to join the Thai foreign minister in those talks. By the same token, you have the Chinese coming out with a new map that expands its territorial claims in the South China Sea in terms of Malaysia. You've had aggressive Chinese actions against Philippine vessels in what the Philippines consider to be their territorial waters. ASEAN has not had a reply to that. So, and of course, you have differing relationships between various ASEAN members and the major powers, the United States and China. And even there, you don't have a uniform position. And that's creating a lot of soul searching.
Well, as you mentioned, disputes in the South China Sea was also a major issue that was put down on the table, particularly that map that the Chinese delegates presented. When will ASEAN be able to come up with a code of conduct on how the South China Sea is used?
Well, I think in many ways it's going to be it's a function of, I think, two things. One is the degree to which the Chinese are willing to be cooperative, and I think we've seen greater Chinese assertiveness recently, which complicates things. And of course, you have major differences in the way that the littoral states of the South China Sea approach this. The Philippines have been much more aggressive about this. The government of the Marcos government has reestablished its military relationship with the United States, is much closer in terms of cooperation with the United States than the previous government was, which was much more lenient towards the Chinese. But on the other hand, you have other Southeast Asian states that are not willing to take the risk of provoking the Chinese. So that doesn't bode well for coming to an agreement.
And North Korea, of course, was another topic of discussion. Their missile launches, the threat that they pose in the region. And now with Kim Jong-un's potential meeting with Putin, it seems like he's going to reinforce support for his country.
Absolutely. I mean, that's less of that came up in the summit in Jakarta, obviously, because the Koreans were present on the second day of the summit. It's not as such an ASEAN issue, it's an East Asian issue. That's not to say that Southeast Asia is not affected by what happens on the Korean Peninsula, particularly with regard to nuclear weapons. And it's not to say that Southeast Asia does not have an interest in what happens in Ukraine, but those are not issues that Southeast Asia as such can resolve or tackle.
All right, James Dorsey, thank you so much for being with us here on the NewsHour and sharing that analysis with us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.